The western night did not wail. I saw the strange girl dig the grave of the giant cattleman's wife with a shovel whose handle was broken, a fragment of letter, 3 riders, and a minister with a torn-backed Bible dragged the iron chest out of the earth. When a stray bullet chipped the dead woman's name, honor fell with the secret, and no one looked back. The night was so still, it carried the sound of metal scraping dry soil. Each thrust, the blade of the shovel hissed through burned roots, stopped against a hard knot, then sprang up, with clods spilling off the rim. The handle was broken midway, bound with hemp rope. The wrap was dark with sweat, fibers frayed like camel hair. She gripped the short shaft with both hands, back bent, hip tilted, accustomed to the work. Wind moved through the family graveyard like running through sharp stakes. Dust shifted silently. On cracked ground, her boot prints smaller than those Levi left. Repeating marks, returning to the same spots, showing it wasn't the first time. Levi stood by the fence. His shoulders blotted out a patch of stars. Thick coat, collar turned. Right hand hanging, left hand resting on the dew-wet rail. Fingers split with salt. Eyes fixed on the pit cut neat into the old mound. His wife's name carved on the stone, Ella Rourke. The slab's edge leaned, casting a crooked shadow on the dead's earth. That lean was new. Last season, Levi had braced it straight himself. He remembered the stagger of his breath while doing it, remembered the smell of damp soil mixed with sweat. She flung earth aside, steady, forearms veined. Nails packed with dry dirt against pale skin, not greasy mud. The soil here was loose, holding the odor of old iron. The blade's paint flaked, edge scarred, but its grind shone recent. A practiced hand had worked it. Even strokes, one direction. Levi did not speak. He heard his heart beat. One measure, slower than the shovel. He counted her breaths. 2 thrusts. 1 sigh. Repeat. More like a well-digger than a thief. Also like a grave-digger, who knew the depth in advance. She lifted her gaze once. Eyes blue, tired, dark pupils steady. No question, no plea. When her eyes fell on Levi, they dropped to the shovel's edge, as if checking it would not be taken. She did not look at the name on stone. An owl shifted branches on the dead cypress. The dry limb cracked once, then silence. Farther off, loose cowbells struck a thin note of iron, then nothing more. The night swallowed sound. Levi stepped off the fence. His boots sank half a joint into hard soil, scraping dry like a file. He circled behind her, outside the arc of the then returned steady. When the dirt balked, she angled the blade, pried with the tip, turned her wrist, lifted, flung the slab. A fine scar cut across her left palm showed when she twisted. Old, healed, ivory-tinged. Cook scar, or one from cutting rope? Levi crouched, good hand on the pit's edge. Fingertips brushed soil. Below the fresh layer, darker earth showed, as if pried not long ago and hastily covered. He smoothed sideways, met a thin groove like a knife dragged. The line bent at a corner, forming a small square, then vanished beneath added soil. He raised his eyes to the leaning stone. The edge of the E in Ella gleamed whiter than the rest. White chalk dust clung in the cut. Someone had scraped it lately? Knife-tapping stone released powder that fell onto the ground. Chalk mixed with dry iron scent. She paused a second. Did not look at him. Shifted stance. Set foot on the rim. Pressed down for leverage. Blade slid beneath hard soil. Pried another patch. She did not guard her skirt from dirt. Did not pull sleeves back. Treated stains as part of the work. Levi looked at her boots. Leather cracked. Soles stitched with black thread. Thread new. tips not yet dulled with dust. On the right heel, a streak of hardened resin. Resin sticks only if one waits long beneath a bleeding tree. Who waited under the dead cypress long enough? He recalled that afternoon. No one passed. The wind turned, carried the smell of cold ash from somewhere. A streak cut across the sky. Far hills might have burned grass, here no one. Only them, the dead, and the owl. When the shovel tip struck something not soil, the sound changed. Deeper. Hollow. She stopped, pressed the blade again, scraped, shedding clods. Levi heard the rasp like a knife against glass. She switched the shovel to her left, scraped dirt with her right hand, fingers tracing the hard face. Her eyes narrowed, corner drawn fine. Levi did not step back. He followed her finger. An iron corner showed, breathing cold under stars. Not rotten wood. Not stone. That corner bore faded rivets, old, not new. He set his hand on the shovel handle. She did not pull. Her hand released. No resistance. She stepped half a pace aside to let him see. The gap between them counted by 2 breaths. No more. Stand where you stand, her voice flat, as if spoken to the cold, not him. Levi gave no answer. He disliked long sentences. Long sentences revealed soft parts. On the graveyard's edge, a figure appeared. Black coat, hat low, arms holding a square burden. Jonas Crowell, the town's minister, walked slow. He stopped longer than a chime. Jonas slid his thumb along the edge of the cover, brushed invisible dust. His boot tip struck a pebble. The pebble rolled short, stopped. Jonas lifted his face to the sky as if marking a star's place, then walked on. No word, no throat clearing, stepped at the exact gap of one who knew the path. Dust at his heels rose and settled at once. While Jonas passed by, the girl stood still as stone. Her neck drew in 1 inch, no more. Levi's back stiff as the fence behind. The owl stopped shifting branches. No sound, no greeting. When the minister's shadow slid out of sight, the wind returned, light as the turn of a page. Levi set the shovel down into the pit, the steel blade knocking the iron corner with a blunt sound. The blunt sound swallowed into the ground. He felt the force rebound along the broken handle. A small crack spread further, like a line on an old glass when met with hot water. She jumped into the pit, asked no leave. Shins sank in loose soil. Her hands swept earth from the iron edge, exposing a wider face. On that face, cross-hatched marks. Not the work of a stranger. One who knew how to hide and later to find had cut those lines, to remember which way the chest lay when buried again. Sweat from her temple fell into the dirt, vanished fast. She lifted her face to Levi, asked no help, refused none, only measured what he would do. That gaze did not accuse, did not plead. It raised a mirror for him to see his own face. Levi bent low, set 2 fingers under the iron lip. Cold. Steel that slept long bit the hand. He did not lift. The chest lay there like a tongue the valley hid beneath its teeth. If pulled out, blood would flow. He knew that kind of wound. No cloth could stop it. He stood straight. His breath left his mouth in thin white, though the night was not that cold. His nose caught another scent in the soil. Not human. Old paper gone damp. Aged paper in dew swells a sour note mixed with iron. That scent pushed up a memory he did not want, then slipped away. He shook his head once, like brushing dust from a collar. She laid her hand on the shovel's blade. Her nail touched the grind, light sliding across like a razor line. That grind was professional. No hurried worker could file so even. The sharpener might have been a smith, might have been someone careful who made the earth keep silent. Levi's eyes swept to the fence where Jonas had passed. Something small lay at its base. He stepped twice, picked it up. A pale sheet, corner wet with dew. Along its edge, the jagged tear of a page ripped fast stayed sharp. No words, only pressed on the neck like the hand of an old woman. Heavy, but not pushing. Levi returned to the pit's edge. He set the paper back on the gravestone ledge. The wind was too weak to move it. It lay flat, like a bookmark. Beneath Ella, the stone's edge bore a fresh strike. The white scar in rock had not gathered dust. Someone touched it. Recently. Not an animal. She stood tall. Shoulder blades sharp beneath the thin shirt. She brushed her hair aside. On her neck, an old bruise in the shape of a ring, faded but not gone. Rope mark. No question. No telling. Only a sign on skin. Levi's old dog padded out to the porch and stopped. It did not bark. Head low, nose sniffing, then turned back inside, as if knowing something that needed no dog. Levi saw its tail flick once, the habit it showed when standing between the two he had once loved. Now, only one remained. She bent again. Shovel struck iron, rang a thin note, then died. Her chest rose one beat sharper than usual. She stilled it. The blade turned sideways, pried at the chest corner, tested the join. No give. She changed angle, worked the left side. Soil slid like sand in an hourglass. Levi looked at his hand on the pit's rim. Callus lined with cracks, matched the grain in wood. A streak of wood grain under his finger mirrored the groove he had traced in soil. Everything here fitted too neatly. His heartbeat shifted to another rhythm. Not drumming, just changed. Above, thin clouds drew a strand across the moon. The light lessened. The pit darkened a notch. The dead lay quiet below, if indeed they lay in this place. Levi noticed the foot of the grave. Weeds there bent one way, not with tonight's wind. Someone had knelt here lately. Knees left two hollows, one deeper than the other. At that moment, she lifted her face. Her eyes paused a beat on the stone, then back to Levi. Perhaps for the first time, she read the name Ella. No stirring, only weighed the heaviness of the letters. They stood still, at the place where the living usually bowed for last words. None spoken, none read. Far off, hoofbeats thin as pins striking glass. Direction unclear. Could be echo from the valley. Could be some beast. Could be the past. The night held it in its mouth, gave no return. She set the shovel on the rim. Short handle, laid crosswise, hemp wrapping at the break catching moonlight. An ordinary tool, made to dig. Nothing more at this hour. Levi pulled his collar, stepped half back so his shadow did not cover the pit. His eyes fell on the R in Rourke. The cut held his breath. So did she. The sound grew, then shrank, then stopped. Jonas was gone. The path he took was not the shortest back to town. It bent by the old Rourke cattle shed. There, Levi once stored things he did not want found. Now, only an empty shed, doors off hinges. Jonas knew the long way. Jonas always knew the roads no one wished to remember. The girl placed her hand on the pit's edge, climbed out. Her soil-stained palm left a mark on the stone ledge. Faint, but straight. Levi looked at it like fresh writing. Not read at once. It needed more light. It needed time. They stood across the pit. Wind passed through. In the hole, the iron corner lay still like a shut eye. No one opened it tonight. No one closed it. Only the faint fall of dirt into a silence long waiting. Levi took his eyes from the pit, looked at the paper, damp with dew, placed on the gravestone ledge. A bead of water hung on its edge, fell and vanished into the name, Ella. He did not pick it up. She did not pick it up. Both left it there, like a handprint one did not wish to wipe. The night pressed down further. Dew thickened in a layer too thin to see. Objects lost their edges. The iron of the shovel lying at the pit's rim shed some of its cold. Everything so still that when a field mouse slipped through grass at the edge, both looked that way in the same beat. No one laughed at the humor of it. This land held no place for laughter at night. At last, Levi opened his mouth. Not to speak, to breathe out a question that never became words. The breath vanished before him, gone like what he had failed to hold. She lifted the shovel, leaned it against the pit's rim, set it soft, set it right, like one returning a borrowed thing to the exact place it was taken. Then she stepped back, 1 pace, 2, kept her eyes on Levi, then bowed her head low, not to greet, but to listen for any stir beneath the ground. Nothing. Only the name on stone slightly askew. And a silence, long enough for every betrayal henceforth to take its seat. Levi seized the shovel. The broken hand left took the paper. Thumb brushed its rough face. The smell of old church wax clung, burnt oil mixed with resin. Ink faded so much that only by tilting to moonlight could the lines be read. Under the grave lies an iron chest. Below, a single slash, then blank. No name, no date. Along the margin, the jagged tear of a page ripped from its spine. Levi lowered his eyes. On the left edge, a smear ran crosswise, like an ashy finger dragged hard from left to right. This was no kitchen ash, grains coarse, reddish, like forge ash or burnt cypress. On the folded corner, a droplet of hardened wax clung like a frozen tear at a candle's lip. He touched once. The wax broke soft, did not stick. Old. She fixed her eyes on his chin, not his mouth. "Where did you get it?" Levi asked with his eyes. Hunya did not answer, her head tilted as if listening beneath the ground. A grain slipped from the shovel's blade, struck the pit floor with a click so faint it might be imagined. Levi let go her wrist, turned. Porch. Order short. No rise in voice. He walked half a pace ahead, the shovel swung in his hand, blade struck a stone hidden in soil, rang thin, then was swallowed by night. On the way to the porch, Levi studied the shovel's shaft. Near the hemp wrapping was a small burn mark, arched, not sweat. A scorch as if pressed to hot iron. On the blade, grind lines even, one side brighter, the work of a left hand. This house had no left-handed sharpener. Ella, his wife, had sharpened the kitchen knife with her right. Levi filed as a cattleman did, right hand driving, left hand steady. On the blade's edge, faint pressed marks of square nails remained, the kind town smiths used to pin handles. Someone had touched this shovel lately, not family. The dry porch board gave a crack under his step, the door ajar. Lamp flame dim inside, wick sputtering. The old dog lifted its head, then sank back down. Levy took the coil of rope from the hook by the frame, the rope old, hemp mixed with horsehair, human sweat sunk deep. He faced Hunya, gave no sign. She held out her hands, silent. He wound 2 loops round her wrist, knots doubled, pulled light to test tightness. The rope slid over skin with a dry rustle like corn leaves. Sit. Levy set her on the long bench along the porch, back to the post. Her boots touched the floor, their dirt tips left faint ovals. She sat upright, not pressed deep into the post, leaving a finger's width between shoulder blades and wood. The gap deliberate, to keep the small graveyard sank into shadow. The stone with Ella leaned toward the wind. The moon spilled a strip of silver on its edge, cold. Levy lifted the paper to eye level. The lamplight, through its thin sheet, revealed a faint pattern at center. A cross within a circle, the watermark of the church ledger Jonas often used. Along the edge, the torn teeth matched. Levy traced the jagged margin with his thumb, felt a break in rhythm, one made by a hurried left hand, upper left corner clean, lower right frayed. Junia lowered her eyes to her knees. A strand of hair fell onto the dry streak on her dress. She lifted it with her fingertip, laid it across her lap like thread. No spare motion. Levy hung the paper on a nail beside the door. It swayed, slow, then stilled. He took the tin cup from the table near the porch, poured half from the jug, set it before Junia. The tin struck wood with a knock. She did not reach. Her eyes moved from cup to shovel, then to his face. No question, no thanks. No refusal. A soft step sounded from the dirt road into the yard. Not horse. Boots that knew how to breathe into the ground, making almost no sound. A shadow stretched at the fence, broke, then reformed. Jonas Crowell stood at the line between light and dark, 3 paces from the porch edge. Black coat clung to a thin frame. In his hand, the old Bible with its broken spine. His thumb pressed the torn back, as if afraid another page would fall loose again. Jonas did not climb the porch, his hat brim low, eyes hidden in shadow, but his jawline clear, a long ridge of bone, lips habitually pressed dry to the point of crack. He looked once at Junia, paused at the rope, then shifted to the shovel. When his gaze hit the black scorch on the shaft, his mouth twitched, an involuntary reflex. Levy saw, said nothing. Late, Jonas spoke one word, voice rasping like paper on wood. Not a greeting, not a question, only a fragment laid on the porch. Levy gave no reply. He shifted his stance, half his body blocking the door. His hand rested on the bench near the knot. The knot held firm, rope ends tucked under the seat, neat as one used to tying horses in strong wind. Jonas looked at the paper nailed beside the door. The book's spine in his hand flexed, as if shielding itself. The lamp glow made the words, "Under the grave lies an iron chest," stand sharper. Jonas tilted his head enough to catch the watermark, looked only at the space between his collar and chin, the gaze of one unwilling to take another's power through eyes. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her lips steady. She turned to Levy, the look carrying only one weight, Choose your ground. Levi stepped half forward, letting Jonas see his hand, once on the shovel, now empty. He held nothing. The stance, no threat, yet taking space. He touched the paper again, lifted it down, held it at Jonas's level. Jonas did not reach. He gave one short nod, like confirming what he had already known. That nod was not for Levi, not for Hunya. It was a mark. The time has come. Laced. His eyes did not leave the paper, now flat on his thigh. Junia leaned, the rope pulled taut, her breath faint. Her chest rose no higher than a coin's width. Out there, the graveyard did not move. The stone leaned still. Grass held its old direction. The moon hung like a silver spoon left unturned. The cricket tried once more, then thought better. No sound carried on. The whole porch sank into a silence thick enough that every blink had sound. That silence was not empty. It was heavy as a chest under soil, waiting for hands. Jonas held his book tighter. Junia held her chin higher. Levi held his breath longer. The shovel held its iron scent and scorch mark, glinting a thin line under the lamp. No one moved further. The phrase, "Some graves shouldn't be dug," hung across the porch like a nail not driven flush into wood. And from far off, somewhere, a hoofbeat thin as a needle began to count into the night. Before dawn, dust rose at the road's mouth in a fine column. Hoofbeats steady as needles tapping tin. 3 riders came without haste, without show. Horses breathed pale smoke. Oiled reins glistened. Iron spurs scraped each other, sparking small sounds, half ringing, half swallowed in fog. The lead man lifted his chin. Malcolm Dade, beard trimmed close, leather gloves long soaked in oil, shining like chestnut shell. His eyes went straight to the pit beneath the dead cypress, not touching the living. At his right, Silas Boone, thin, sharp-chinned, cracking his knuckles in steady rhythm. Crack, crack, like marking time for a tune. At his left, Orrin Pike, cross-eyed, one eyelid twitching each time he caught a gleam. On his wrist hung a scratched silver band, flashing like dead fish scales when it shook. "The chest is ours." Malcolm spoke, chin still lifted, voice dropped like a stone. No introduction, no warrant, only that. Levi stood at the porch edge. His shadow swallowed the small lamp flame behind him. The bench along the post still bore the rope mark where Junia had been bound last night. He bent, pulled the rope end from the leg, untied the knot in one sure motion. Hemp slid on dry skin with a rasp. He did not look at her, but pressed his hand hard on her shoulder, pushed her out toward the grave. Gesture neat, cold. Junia did not resist. Her boots scraped a faint line in dry soil. Her black hair tangled damp with dew against her collar. She tilted her head just enough for her eyes to cut across Malcolm's chin, then settle on the shovel leaning by the door. Levi lifted the shovel and flung it. The broken shaft spun short, hemp wrap hat low. He did not step forward, did not step back. His eyes followed the shovel as if it were a compass needle. Malcolm jerked his chin once. Silas led his horse 2 steps ahead. Orrin cocked his head, cross-eye catching the shovel's blade, squinting a beat. "Quick!" Malcolm said, voice hollow. "Down!" Hunya stepped half into the pit, the shovel blade sliding, turning. Soil cracked along the line already cut at night. The shovel's scrape on hollow shifted from sharp to deep. She levered, the broken shaft crude but exact. Levi stood at the rim, hands open, holding nothing. his boot planted square on firm ground, keeping the edge from caving. All above moved calm, as if building a new corral. Malcolm did not draw. He only set his gloved hand on the leather strap of his holster, middle finger tapping faint rhythm. Silas stopped, cracking knuckles, folded both hands before his belly, eyes on the digging. Orrin rustled in his coat, a short scrape of paper on leather, then stilled. The chest rose a corner, gray iron, rivets dulled, old paint flaked like scales. At the left corner, the lock rusted, crusted with salt, but its clasp bore fresh hammer's shine, like a fisheye. Hunya slid the shovel down, pried again. A fine line rose in her neck. Levi bent, slid his hand under the base, lifted another edge. Dew sifted down like dust. Cold iron smell pushed up from the pit. Enough! Malcolm's tone shifted, but his face did not. His chin jerked again, shorter, firmer. Open! Levi stepped back half a pace, yielding. Hunya wedged the shovel at the lock, pulled hard. The broken shaft rasped, blade caught, a click cracked. The lid stirred. She switched grip, used the flex of the hemp wrap as fulcrum, wrenched sudden. The lock gave. The lid rose a crack. Dry, damp air spilled out, carrying the smell of old paper, worn cloth, and the faint ring of skin-worn metal. Through the opening, a yellow envelope showed. Hunya slid her hand, lifted the lid. The chest's contents lay bare. At top, coarse binder tied with cord. Beneath, a stack of papers clamped by a thin plank stamped with red wax. The wax split. The seal rolled loose, half-pressed, faintly bearing a cross in circle. Beside it, a worn gold wedding ring. Inside carved an E, the stroke shaky, old, the stone long gone, leaving a hollow. Malcolm glanced at the ring, the corner of his mouth twitching a half-smile. He did not touch. Paper! Orrin gave a rough cough, edged his horse. Silas tilted his head, weighed watermark showing faint in thin patches. Upper left stamped J.C. in watermark. Beneath, Ella Rourke's scrawled signature. The E, like the one carved in the ring, shaky, heavy at its start. Below that, witness, Jonas Crowell, ink faded brown. Beside it, the town's red wax pressed into the cord. That wax had been pinched, broken, half left on the paper, half rolled loose into the chest, the very piece just now. Levy looked at his wife's name on the deed. His lids did not blink. His throat rose once, then fell. He did not reach. Junia watched him, her lips shut, her eyes on the words, "Transfer all the land." No expression shone. Only her breath shifted, from steady to slow. Malcolm clicked his tongue, a sound barely there. "Enough, huh?" He asked no one, as if asking whether dawn had come. Silas stretched his hand, not touching the paper, only held near, palm open, waiting for Levy to let go the chest rim. Orrin smiled halfway, cross-eye narrowing at the ring. "Down payment," he said, tilting his head, exposing a pale strip of skin under his hat brim. Levy drew a breath, short and cold. He could not hold it in his hand. His hand pressed on the wooden lid, pushed it down an inch as if to close. Malcolm tilted his head, leather gloves shifting. Silas skipped one beat of breath. Junia looked at the back of Levy's hand, the blue vein along his finger showing sharp. Jonas did not move, only opened his mouth slightly as if to speak, then stopped. "I said enough," Malcolm repeated, but now his voice carried grit. He dropped his hand to the holster. Orrin lifted his coat edge, showing the dark grip beneath. Silas tilted his neck, a faint crack sounded, then ceased. Levy did not close the lid fully. He let go, stepped back half a pace. Then he drew. The motion of one who had drawn 100 times, but forward a span, twisted at the right angle, barrel sliding free from the coat's shadow, leather scraping steel sharp. He did not aim at anyone. He lifted high over the horses, pulled. The shot cut through fog, struck stone at the pit's edge, sparked. The echo drowned in dirt, fragments hit the gravestone. The first E of Ella chipped. A shard fell into the pit, clinking thin. The name lost a corner. The silence after was no longer the same. Junia froze for one beat. Her eyes cut to the stone, then back to the paper. Malcolm did not flinch. He only smiled further, until the corner touched his old scar. "Your Honor misfired, Rourke," he said, light as flicked ash. Jonas stepped fully from the fence's shadow. He drew nothing. Fingers, like a surgeon. He did not look at Levi. His eyes went straight toward the town, where the clerk's wooden office stood above the hill like a hollow box. "Office hours this morning," he said, cracking a joint once more, like stamping. Orrin stooped for the ring. He set it on his gloved palm, spun it once. The gold clinked against the silver band on his wrist. "Enough proof, no one needs to argue," he said, his crossed eye spilling a crude satisfaction. Levi lowered the gun, barrel down. Powder smoke thin, mixing with paper and rust. The old dog whined low, like wind through a broken flute. Junia stood still, shovel in hand, blade resting at the same angle as in the night. Her grip tightened, hemp scraping her wrist, leaving a narrow red mark. Malcolm nodded once. "We'll take it." He did not ask, did not seek leave. His eyes passed Jonas like measuring post stone. Jonas slowly shut the book. The torn spine creaked faintly, then fell quiet. Levi looked at the chipped E on the grave. He did not step, did not cover, the gun still warm in his hand. He half pulled the trigger, then let go. In the yard, a green fly crossed, paused at the chest's lip, then tilted off. Silas tucked the paper into his coat, buttoned. Orrin dropped the ring into his saddle pouch. The clasp snapped shut. Malcolm pulled reins. Horse lifted its head, breath thick. "We need no more shots," he said. "The law's enough." Levi gave no answer. He turned the barrel, lowered it slow into the holster. Butt struck leather with a dull knock. He raised his eyes past Jonas. Jonas did not turn aside. In his eyes, no win, no loss, only the look of one standing between a page and a hole in earth. Junia lifted the shovel upright. The blade caught a thin stroke of morning. The broken shaft's black scorch weighed like a fingerprint. She leaned it at the chest, let go. Her hand trembled unseen, nails lined with dry dirt. The three riders turned. Iron spurs rang a note. Dust rose behind their heels. Malcolm did not look back. Silas cracked one last joint, like closing a door. Orrin glanced at the chipped E, narrowed his eye, fixing the scene inside his skewed pupil like a seal. They left. Hoofbeats stretched thin, then vanished. The yard returned to powder smoke, fading slow, dew thickening, chest open, papers gone, ring missing, stone missing a letter's edge. On the porch, rope marks still indented wood. The torn page Jonas had once ripped no longer hung on the nail. Long detour. Each step placed in old earth no one remembered. Above, the vultures stayed in their roost, too early to stir. They chattered once, then stilled. Night pulled from the yard, leaving a pale streak on the shovel and a broken piece of a name on stone. And there, among rust and candle wax, Levi Rourke's honor and land fell down a line with no return. The dust of 3 horses settled slow as ash. On the gravestone, new dust covered the chipped E, pale gray, thin as dead skin. Malcolm folded the papers into his coat. Silas buttoned. Orrin dropped the ring into his saddle pouch. The clasp snapped. None looked back. Horse muzzles turned toward the road. Hot breath burned dew into mist. Hoofbeats struck even, pulling the yard's breath away like air drawn from a chest. Junia sank at the pit's edge. Head bowed. Dew-wet hair veiled her face like black cloth. The shovel stood against her leg, broken shaft pressing her shin bone, sharp. Her shoulders did not shake. Only her chest sank once, then rose slow. Mud on her knees dried rough, cracked to flakes. Levi stood between porch and grave, the gun holstered, but his hand still held the powder smell, harsh and empty. He looked at Ella, chipped. Morning light not yet reached. The missing corner darker than the rest, like a navel. The old dog lay by the step, ears pressed down, eyes open but unfocused. Its breath counted dust falling on the grave. Wind swept the fence, pushed dry leaves one circle, then stopped. At the pit's slope, earth slipped enough to show another rusted rivet on the chest's side. Just enough for someone to know the chest no longer full. Just enough for the living to know the dead had been disturbed. Levi bent, lifted the shovel from Junia's leg. Steel struck dirt with a small clang. He leaned it on the porch post, blade outward. The broken shaft scraped wood, left a black mark longer than last night's. He set a tin cup on the step for Junia. She did not lift her head, did not reach. The water stayed flat. One bubble surfaced, burst. "Stand." Levi said one word, low. She set her hand to the ground, pushed up, her knee cracked dry. Like a tongue, Junia lifted her eyes just as the glint sank. Her gaze darkened half a notch, then flattened. The yard empty. Vultures above had not yet dropped. Inside, the lamp side wick touched oil, sputtered twice, then stilled. Levi entered, set the full cup on the table. Junia's dirt-smudged mark dried on its rim, leaving a thin brown ring like a tree age line. He pulled the rope from its hook, draped it over a chair, the hemp coarse, heavy. Last night's knots undone, ends smoothed, laid as if it had no history. The old dog shifted, laid its head on the chair leg, eyes closed but slitted. Levi set his hand on the chair back. His knuckles touched hemp, rough. He drew back, stood long, watching a gray strip of sky through the door. Night fell, colder by half a step. Wind from the well slid into the house in a thin line. Junia sat on the step, back not to the post, a finger's width gap as before. Her hair dried, clumped. Her eyes followed a cricket across the boards, then lost it. The shovel rang faint as wind slid its blade, then ceased. The yard stilled. Levi blew the lamp out, left moonlight stretched across the doorway. The table blackened. He brushed its surface with the back of his hand, tested cold. He sat, elbows on knees, breath without sound. The dog whined low. A dream. Later, a strange, damp earth smell crept inside, not old soil, new. Rich with water, like hands just washed at the well. Levi raised his head. The door had not moved. The wind no stronger, but the shovel no longer leaned at the post. Its place left a clean shadow on the board where dust had not yet fallen. On the table stretched a streak of dried mud, curved like the shovel's edge, stopping where a hand would set it for one beat, then lift. Quiet. Levi rose. No one at the door. Porch bare. Step clean. Only the mud streak like a signature unsigned. He set his hand on it. The crust crumbled soft, the well water smell sharp in his nose. The old dog lifted, sniffed, licked its lips, whined thinner than before. Junia sat still, watching him through the post's shadow. She did not ask. Her mouth opened a little, then closed. "Where's the shovel?" Levi asked into the dark. No reply. Only the deep well struck stone once, as if a pebble dropped. No wind, yet the well had voice. Levi stepped onto the porch. Dew clung to his hair. Night closed full. The path to the well at the house's left black as a cut. He did not walk at once. He turned back to the table, lifted the cup from the mud streak. On its base, a half oil cooled. The smell of mud thinned. The mark on the table hardened. When the fog thinned and the sky turned pale steel, the neighbor's rooster in the valley gave a broken crow. Levi stepped into the yard toward the well, each step placed on hard soil like stones laid across a stream. The old dog moved half a body ahead, then stopped, tail flicking once, staring at the well's rim, whining deep in its throat. The broken shovel stood upright beside the stone ring, its blade wedged into moss, driven into the seam between two slabs, deep enough the edge vanished. The shaft rose straight like a rotten flagpole. The hemp binding dark with water, fibers stuck together. On the blade a wet streak ran down from the well's mouth, washing off the night's mud. No more burnt iron smell, only cold water, plain, without human scent. Junia was not on the porch. Where she had sat, one strand of hair clung to the post, caught morning light once, then slipped off in the wind. On the sand from well to road, small boot prints ran close to the edge, hidden. Where sand joined hard dirt, her tracks merged into horse marks from the morning, those of Malcolm, Silas, Orrin, their left shoes nicked, repeating in rhythm. Her steps joined theirs like a thin stream into a river, leaving no foam. Levi bent low. He touched the shallowest print. Sand filled his fingers. He straightened, looked down the road to town. No sky, no people. Only the old dust column from morning still hanging like a fog tired of living. The turn came there, quiet as a lamp pinched out. He knew his ground lost. No one needed to speak. The shovel, his house's tool, now stood guard at the well, marker of another. Junia, bound last night, gone with Malcolm's horses, as if assigned choice. The waterline drained from his hand, leaving a chipped E and a hollow chest in the pit. Levi went inside. The door scraped tired against the floor. The table still bore the dried mud streak. He looked at it like old blood turned. The old dog lay where it had the night before, head on the chair leg, eyes slit. The lamp cold, its wick drawn back to a black bead. The rope coiled neat around the chair, not tied for binding, laid ready. The knot loose, end looped through the armrest, long enough for 2 wrists. No body there, only someone's thought. Levi placed his hand on the and returned, now to stand by the well as another mark. Levi stood in the room, eyes moving from rope to table to door. He swallowed something nameless caught in his throat. "Hunya," he called, soft, first time. The sound fell, rolled twice, stopped at the chair's rope. No answer. Outside, sun pulled mist from the fence, leaving dry streaks like veins in wood. On the shovel at the well, one last drop fell, shattered small, unheard. At the road's edge, the small tracks had dissolved into horse prints. And in the house, the loose knot hung still, a mouth open, unspeaking, waiting for the next hand to choose whom it would bind. The gravestone leaned another degree unmeasured. Rain had not fallen, but dew dragged earth over the carving, filling half Ella with cold brown. The chipped E now looked like a shut eye. At the grave's foot, 2 knee hollows hardened. A black beetle crossed the carving, caught mud, left a small trail like broken writing. Levi stood before the stone, boots edged with mud. His hand pressed the slab, tried to set it right. It was heavy not in weight, but in its chosen lean. He wedged a thin wood chip beneath, tapped twice. The stone only sighed, then lay still, like the dead, unwilling to change sides. He pulled the chip free, set it on grass, did not wedge again. A dry stalk snagged in the carved R, its yellow tail quivering faint. Levi plucked it. Mud clung beneath his nail, filling old grooves darker. He wiped it on his trousers, left a faint handprint down the cuff, the mark of one who tried to raise what refused to stand. The old dog lay 2 strides from the grave, chin on grass, eyes slit. It did not whine, only followed Levi's hand with its pupils. On the pit's rim, the chest lay open, lining pale like dead fish eyes. One corner of cloth lifted with wind, puffed once, collapsed, whispering as if into a collar. Levi knelt, scraped mud from letters with his knife's edge. The blade tapped soft against stone, blunt sound. Dust fell brown, slid to edges, clung again. The more he cleared, the more it filled the chip. He stopped. His palm rested long on the stone, then lifted. His handprint left a thin half-moon in mud. A black hair stuck in the L groove. Not human. Horsehair. Fine broken tip, shed when saddles change. Levi pulled it, rolled it between fingers, watched it catch light, then fade. He tucked it in his coat. Edge, a grain of dried mud on his finger flew off his coat, fell into the floorboard seam, vanished. The porch lay empty. The long bench against the post remained where it had the night before, its back coated in dust thin enough to blow away, yet no one blew. Where a back once leaned, a faint trace of damp mist drew a curve like half a sentence unfinished. Rope coiled the armrest, the loose knot hanging like a small open mouth. The rope's end dropped a handspan just where a wrist might slide in. No one touched it. The tin cup still half water on the table, its rim marked by a thin brown ring from dirt clinging the night before. Inside the cup, one dark strand lay against the wall like a line of ink. The mud streak from table's edge to center had cracked, forming a small map of a dry river. Levi touched it with his fingertip. The crust broke. Old well water scent escaped once more, faint, then gone. The old dog pushed its head beneath the table, lifting dust with breath. It sniffed the rope, licked a short patch, then turned away. Where it lay, its fur pressed the ground like a worn rug. Levi dragged the chair back, dust lifting in a fine sheet. He did not sit. He turned the chair to face the door so its back looked into the yard. That angle set the loose knot outward for anyone passing the porch to see. He laid his hand on the knot, tugged once. The rope slid across skin like dry snake, soft in a doubtful way. He stopped midway, let go. The knot swung slightly, then stilled. From the ceiling a spider bit off its thread, dropped a length, hung midair, swaying. Its line caught dim light, thin as down. Levi pinched the oil lamp's wick, cold and brittle as paper ash. No one lit it again. No one needed light to see this. Outside the porch, Junia's boot mark still faint, moving from chair to post, then lost. On the second step's edge, a sole slide mark, someone rising, careful not to sound. A flax thread from the rope lay there, tipped with one brown dot like a tack head. Levi bent, picked it, set it on the table beside the mud line. The fibers sagged, stuck fast. Wind crossed the porch, blowing half the dust on the bench aside. The mark of no one sitting deepened. Old sweat scent lifted, unseen, then slipped away. On the post's corner, a nail held nothing, its tip still brown with wax trace, dry as old blood. Levi stepped into the yard. He did not lock the door. The door closed slow on its own, hinge creaking one short note, stopping before shut. A thin, dark striped streak of dried blood ran diagonal, brown, thick at tip, thinning toward shaft, some spots peeling like molting wings. Levi stopped before the shovel. He did not touch its edge. He tilted his head, let morning light cut across the mark. In the crust a short black thread stuck, unclear if hair or burned cloth. On the rivet's rim a small red bead clung, not blood. Wax. Rose red. Cracked to a triangle. Exact the missing piece from the chest seal. The wax here. The seal there. Broken. A line drawn, needing no voice. The water below pulsed faint, like a chest trying to lie still. Levi tossed a pebble down. It struck once, thoop. Spread out. No circles seen, only heard. He bent close to the rim, the smell of wet stone rose, his throat knotted a beat, then released. The old dog stood at edge, not daring near. It looked at Levi, then the road, then back to the shovel. It sniffed the dry blood in the wind, licked its mouth, stepped back half a pace, lay down, head on its paws. It waited. Waited for the call. No call came. A long shadow slid across the fence. Jonas Crowell came down the side path by the well, his pace even, eyes on the road, black coat buttoned to the neck, collar raised. A Bible under his arm, tied shut with a thin cord, hiding the torn spine. His thumb hooked the cord, gripping like a man holds the mouth of a dirty purse. Jonas passed the shovel, his shoe clicking soft on stone, almost no sound. He did not stop, did not touch, did not bend. He adjusted his hat brim with a small motion, shading his eyes. Where his coat brushed air turned once, carrying a breath of old candle wax. Church paper smell. The smell of land sail long past. Jonas walked on. Shoulders neither sagged nor raised with burden. He only walked. Levi watched over Jonas's shoulder, did not call. His eyes caught the cord binding the book's spine, then returned to the shovel. Between them, no words. Only the triangle wax on rivet and the bloodline across. Wind passed, not strong enough to lift wax or erase stain. Jonas reached the lane's end, turned onto the willow road. One dry leaf fell from high, twirled twice, landed at the well's rim near the shovel, shivered, then lay still. Jonas did not look back. His shape cut through light, thin as a chosen blade. His footsteps faded into one mark of silence. Black beads, without story, without judgment. Levi straightened his back. He measured with his eyes the distance from the well to the grave, from the grave to the porch, then back to the well. 3 points formed a silent triangle, each marked by a sign. The leaning stone, the dust-covered chair, the blood-stained shovel. In the middle of the triangle was nothing, only light wind and the smell of wet stone. Enough space for a secret to lie tilted without being overturned. He turned back, slow, so the swarm of insects would not stir. The sound of boots on dry earth was like fingers tapping a table. He passed the chair without sitting, his hand brushing the loose knot, the soft feel of hemp turning into a question with no subject. He kept on, reached the gravestone, stood facing the name Ella, half buried in mud, looking long as if reading a short passage he did not want to finish. The wind pushed the thin layer of mud down by a millimeter. Half a letter showed a little more, then stopped. Not enough to be whole, just enough for the living to know the letter was still there, and that the missing part was a lack the living themselves had made. Farther out, the morning dust had settled. The road was empty. The town held its tongue. The shovel still stuck by the well, stone wall cool, dried blood like paint. Jonas was gone. Unya nowhere. Levi stood between the 3 marks, motionless. In this land, a choke needs no throat. It sits in objects, in the way people leave what they could take, letting it speak instead. In the end, only the broken-handled shovel by the well remained. On the blade, the dried blood stood as a period no one dared wipe. At the graveyard, the E on the stone missed its corner. On the porch, the loose knot still opened its mouth, waiting. The chest was hollow, the red wax chip wedged in the rivet, like a seal refusing denial. Where does betrayal begin? From the torn page of the church ledger, from the trembling hand signing, or from the stray bullet that cut away part of a dead one's name? And silence? Is it innocent, when one only passes by like Jonas, eyes not turning? Some say land is home. Some say honor is the roof. But between a wife's grave and a chest of papers, when the choice comes, who can hold both? To bind a person and leave a loose knot, was that mercy or just another kind of lock? This land remembers no oaths. This land remembers what people choose not to pull out. The shovel, still stuck, the wax still clinging, the E